What's up, scholars? Welcome back to another video. Today we are doing Act 2 of Wano. I finished, I think, up to chapter 955. Like, I've read through 955, up to the end of Act 2. Again, just like Act 1, this held so much information. There's a lot of moving pieces in this arc. There's things happening all over the place in different towns with different groups of people. We're getting a lot of information on all sides, but by the end of this act, all of it has kind of come together to a merging point to the start of the raid. So I'm gonna do my best to get all the information kind of in order. I know I'm gonna miss a few things because there's too much, almost so much information to dissect and absorb. There's a lot to talk about, a lot that was in this arc, so if I miss a few things, I'm sorry. I already know I'm gonna miss a few things as I'm going through this arc. So I want to say that to begin with. I've read it all, I do get it all, but if I don't mention it, I'm sorry. There's a couple main points that I want to make before we start. In the last video, I was really worried about Luffy's anger and what his anger was going to manifest as in this next part, what he was going to be doing with it. And he handled it a lot better than I was expecting, but on that same note, he's getting a little more feral in his responses, in his fights, if you ask me. And I mainly see it in the way he smiles. Some of the panels when Luffy is like charging towards somebody or using haki and he's smiling, it looks so just feral and like I'm like, okay, Luffy, what is going on? So I think that rage is being portrayed through that smile, and because he's not in front of Kaido yet, that rage is just kind of simmering down. It comes out a little bit like when he's defending Hyo, or when he's looking at everybody laugh at Yasu. But yes, Luffy is definitely like he's channeling it in a different way than what I was expecting him to, but it's also like it's kind of scary. Like some of the times he smiled, I'm like, okay, Luffy, I need you to stop. Like, you're scaring me. But besides Luffy, I think what happened in Act 2 is very appropriate. It worked very well for what the last part of this arc is going to be, or what I'm, in my mind, assuming it is going to be. I still have like 100 chapters left to read. I'm only at 955, but it's fine. So Luffy is a character I hyper focused on in the first act, and I'm still like hyper focused on in this act, because while Luffy has been central in a lot of the arcs that we've seen, like especially post time skip, we haven't seen him get like a true like highlight focus on him recently. And I think what is happening with Wano is just kind of how Luffy is, one, having another training arc with another mentor that he needs when he's in the labor camp. He's getting this secondary training arc to teach him more, to prepare him to fight Kaido. The way he's giving the speeches to people, the way he's making these promises, Luffy is becoming a very focal character. And I get it, like Luffy's the main character, of course he is, but like you had Whole Cake Island where Sanji was, Sanji took the spotlight. You have Zou where the Minks kind of took the spotlight, and even Sanji was a spotlight in the arc as well. And then, what was before that? And then Dressrosa, you had this huge focus on Law, and while Luffy was a very central part of that, a lot of it was because of his relation to Law and how he was helping Law out. And then before Dressrosa was, Punk Hazard, and then Fishman Island. So Luffy's been kind of coasting through, helping all of these people and playing very vital, like, supportive roles to these characters that get focal points. But in Wano, it's like he's kind of taken that spotlight back that we haven't seen him get in a little while. At least in my opinion, I haven't seen him take this much precedence in the forefront of the arc with things being centered around him, and I haven't seen that in a while. At least not to this extent. And I'm really happy to see that. And with the build-up that this is happening and the focal point on Luffy, I think this is going to be building up to a very dramatic fight with Kaido. It's got to be something huge. It's got to be something epic. There's going to be, you know, insane dialogue, an insane fight. It's going to be just mind-boggling because of the setup that we're getting, the training, the speeches, how people are following it, how, you know, the whole situation with the raid. They're going to Kaido. They're stepping into enemy territory. And like how Luffy has kind of rallied these people to him. Not just, you know, the prisoners or other people of Wano. He's rallied these samurai themselves because he has inspired them back all the way in Punk Hazard and Zou. He has inspired them and they are following along to fulfill their dream and ambition with Luffy's help. I'm really, really excited to see how this is going to play out. I'm still a little nervous because Big Mom is here with Kaido and they have an alliance, and that's not good news. So Luffy might potentially be facing two emperors at the same time, or if Luffy is going to take on Kaido, that gives the question, who is going to take on Big Mom? Is it going to be a member of his crew, or is his crew going to dedicate themselves to taking out like all of Kaido's underlings, like Queen and King and all of them, and leave that to maybe, I don't even know if the samurai could take Big Mom down, but maybe Law might have a shot against Big Mom. I mean, maybe. It could go a couple different ways, but things are moving, and it's so much, and there's so much information. The dialogue, or more importantly, the speeches that have been given in this arc, especially in part 2 and act 2, have just been amazing. All of these people are just blowing me away, and I get emotional from their speeches and what they're saying. Yasu, I'm not okay. And the freaking smile fruits. We finally get the explanation, and now I wish we never did. I mean, there's so much in this arc, in this act, that I'm trying to go through it. But like, yes, something big is brewing with Luffy. He's kind of taking the forefront of this, and he's kind of scaring me a little bit with the way he's smiling. Like, he can have a big smile. He's always had a very big smile, but he can look a little less crazy when he smiles. That would be okay with me. Luffy aside, a couple of other characters got highlighted in this arc. One was Robin, just her information gathering, how she was able to get all of the data that she needed to report back to everybody. She did a fantastic job undercover. We get a big highlight with Zoro, from him saving Hiyori to the whole thing with the blades of Shusui and then Enma. And that whole thing was cool. Sanji was highlighted in this arc in a negative way at first, or in a positive way, then negative, and then positive again. He made a mistake. He's already paid for that mistake in several different ways. So that's all I'm gonna say about it. In the end, he's still my boy. It's still fine. And then the last one that really got highlighted from our group was Law. Law is kind of like part of the crew now. I know he's got his own crew in an alliance, but still, Law got a little bit of a highlight, and he's got a plan. He did something, and I'm curious to see how that's going to work out. The others have been doing their part. They have been doing well to play their role as undercover agents, to what they've been doing, helping out everybody and getting everything in order for the raid. So they've all been doing a splendid job. with what they were, with what they're supposed to do, but those characters were highlighted from this arc, in my opinion. Or at least this act. I keep saying arc, and I'll probably say it on accident again, because arc and then act, I get the two mixed up. So if I say arc instead of act, just know what I'm talking about. That was a much longer introduction than I was planning, but that's okay. Let's go ahead and get into the actual review of Wano Act 2. So we actually start off this act not in Wano. We get Mihawk and Perona. Perona figures out that Moria is still alive. Mihawk lets us know about the whole situation at the Reverie, that the Revolutionary Army has declared war and they have started their rebellion against the Celestial Dragon. So that's happening over there. And then we get Moria going to Blackbeard's island to challenge Blackbeard. And Blackbeard has killed Absalom, which I'm okay with. No hard feelings here for that. And ends up trapping Moria, and I think Blackbeard is trying to obtain Moria's power or get Moria to side with him. But we get back to Wano after that kind of little aside, which, again, it's building to something. We're probably not going to get that in this arc. It'll probably be whatever follows Wano is when we get the fulfillment of what is happening at the Reverie right now, and this whole situation with Blackbeard and Moria, because Blackbeard really hasn't done anything like in the forefront since Marineford. We've been told over and over and over again that, you know, he's getting stronger, he's doing this, he's doing that, but we haven't actually seen him. And it's about time we do, so I have a feeling he's going to be making an appearance soon, because there's no way we're just going to have this huge build up to Blackbeard and him not ever do anything. So we're going to see how that goes. We get kind of a recap on what's going on at Wano, and you get Tama is okay. Thank goodness. I love her. Tama's okay. She's with the samurai. Raizo is off to find Luffy in Udon, where they're forcing him to work in hard labor. So Raizo is on his way to rescue Luffy, and everybody else is still kind of doing what they've been doing before then. And then we get this introduction of King and Queen. We haven't seen too much of King. We saw his transformation because when Big Mom and her pirates showed up, he knocked her and the pirates off of the waterfall and ended up giving her memory loss. I'm going to get there in a second because it's okay. But yes, so we saw that little bit with King and kind of him back with Kaido and Onigashima. It's kind of all we saw of King. Queen, however, he played a much more central role in this act, and he's kind of awful, but I kind of like him. He's a funky dude, but he's fun. I can't just hate him for being part of Kaido's crew. He's got a fun personality, I will admit that. So we get King and Queen, and they're both ancient. What is it? What's their devil fruit? They're both ancient Zoan fruit users, and they're both like some of Kaido's, I'm guessing, strongest subordinates, judging like how the roles that they're playing in this act. They're like Kaido's right-hand people. You have the rebellion cards and the insignia that's getting all passed around to the right people so that people are aware of what's going to be happening soon. So, and Usopp is actually the one who passes them out. So he's distributing these, and everybody's kind of getting in the know-how of what is going to be happening. And then we get Sanji, precious little Sanji, having a soba stand, selling his delicious noodles to literally every lady who will come up there. And I think it's so funny that the entire line that he has is women, because that's accurate. That's so accurate. So, I mean, he is doing a bang-up job selling these soba noodles, and he's having a grand time doing it. As he's doing it, he's able to kind of give food to Robin, Frankie, and Usopp, and they're kind of all sitting there discussing things and what they're doing. And we get over, before I get back into the stuff with Sanji, we get over to Luffy, who is in a labor camp, and there's this old man Hyo, and he gets knocked to the ground by these guards because, oh, well, you're old and decrepit, all you deserve is one dumpling because that's all you worked for. And after the old man gets hit, we get Luffy and Kid literally just hauling all of these stone slabs like it's nothing because they want to eat as much as they want, as much as they can. So they're literally doing so much work that the people can't even keep up with it, so that they can have all of the dumplings. They have all of the dumplings that they can eat. And as soon as this weird hippo guy tries to come and be mad at Luffy and Kid for eating his dumplings, they beat up the hippo and save Old Man Hyo and become like these inspirational figures to everybody else in the prison. But then we get back to Sanji, and Sanji fights over spilled soba because these men come up to the soba stand and are not happy that Sanji is in their turf and their territory, and they decide to wreck his shop and spill all of the soba noodles. And we already know how Sanji feels about food. It didn't work out for them. Sanji beat them. Frankie joined in. It was great. But Sanji does have to pay the consequences for doing that in their territory because of who their kind of boss is. So Kyoshiro is kind of a boss of that area in a sense. So after learning that his men were defeated by a soba shop owner, he wanted some retribution for that. So Sanji is now a wanted person and goes by the name Soba Mask because nobody recognizes him quite yet. Especially the people that are sent after him, Drake and all them, they don't recognize Sanji, so he can get by saying he's just Soba Mask. But that's when we meet Toko. Toko, this adorable little girl who cannot stop laughing. After learning about the whole smile fruit, the rage I felt towards Doflamingo, Caesar, Kaido, and Orochi, I don't even have the words to say how foul that is. And knowingly feeding these fruit to these starving people, knowing that they're going to eat it because they're starving to death, and doing it anyways. Some of y'all said on my last video that Orochi was gonna make me really, really mad, and you're right. He does make me really mad. But they all make me really mad. Him, Doflamingo, Kaido, and Caesar, since Caesar was the one who manufactured them, they all make me very angry. But yes, we meet Toko, and she is thankful that Sanji has one last serving of soba. He gives it to her, and she eats it very happily. And it makes them all smile too, because she's a very cheerful girl. So, oh, you make me want to smile too, which is very sweet. Until we learn why she smiles all the time. And then it just hurts. We get back to the labor camp with Hyo kind of making friends with Luffy, feeling indebted to Luffy saving him, and then just wanting to stick by Luffy for everything that he's doing. We get Raizo finally coming up to Luffy, and we get that full explanation that Raizo is looking for the key to Luffy's sea prism cuff so that he can escape. And then, oh my gosh, of any character, any villain that could have been reintroduced we get Caribou. And before y'all ask me if I read the cover story with Caribou on them, no, I didn't. If I saw Caribou on the cover story, I skipped it because I don't like him. So no, I had no idea that Caribou was in Wano. He's just as despicable and slimy and unlikable as he was when we saw him in Fishman Island, and I really don't like that he helped Luffy get out of prison. I'm not okay with that. That's the only thing I'm gonna say about Caribou this entire thing, because I don't want to say anything more about him. I just don't want to talk about him. I don't like Caribou. So he's there. He helped Luffy. That's it. That's the only mention he gets. We get introduced to this Oiran, who is shown that she's duped several men out of all of their money. She's duped them and they want revenge, and they're unable to take their revenge on her. And she is the most desirable woman in all of Wano. She is a very beautiful woman too. Especially knowing who she is now, Little Miss Oiran. But yes, they're having this big fancy party at Orochi's place, at his little castle, whatever it is. So she's going there to meet him. Robin, undercover, is supposed to be there as well. And Toko, we realize, is a worker with Oiran. She works for Oiran. We do get information that Frankie had been working as a carpenter so that he could find these plans for Kaido's mansion, but it's kind of like a rabbit trail trying to find them, and they end up losing the trail, so they're trying to figure out where those plans went. They end up fighting them because they end up being with Ashura Doji, who has the plans and has all these ships for them. But we get introduced to Yasu, who is with Zoro. The two are going to this village together. Yasu is this incredibly happy person who is beloved by literally every single person in his village. And he is happy-go-lucky, seemingly. Again, because of the devil fruit, because of the smile fruit. Their interactions, him and Zoro's interactions, are funny because he always tries to make Zoro smile. Like, him and the other people in the village are always trying to make him smile. It's funny because Zoro doesn't typically just sit there smiling all the time. And they just have great interactions, and I really liked their dynamic. And Yasu is just great. He's a great person. But yes, then we get Orochi having this grand party because, oh, well, this is Wano. You can eat as much as you want. You can drink as much as you want. Be happy here. Orochi is just garbage. Absolute garbage. He is a dumpster fire that shouldn't even be allowed to be on fire. It should just go straight to toxic waste and then just disappear somewhere. But he's here. I don't like Orochi. But while Orochi's having this really grandiose party, Law comes to Sanji and warns Sanji that he needs to hide because people are on the lookout for him because of the whole Soba incident. So they're all having to run, and they are running until Drake, or whatever the other guy's name is, these dinos, they go wrecking other people's Soba shops without knowing if it's Sanji or not. They're just wrecking all these people's shops and livelihoods, thinking that, oh, well, because it's the same type of business, we're gonna come here and destroy everything anyways. Sanji, of course, after he sees everything getting destroyed because he's running, surprise, surprise, he goes to attack because he's not just gonna sit there and stand by while all these people get hurt because of what he did. And Law's just like, no, they can't figure out who you are, or, you know, this could jeopardize the plan. And so Sanji, I love this moment for Sanji when he's talking about, you know, for the sake of, you know, this mission, for the sake of everything that we're working for, I can put my pride aside to do this. And he's talking about the Germa canister that he still has. And he just smiles and he says, as long as they don't find out who I really am. Yeah, so this is what he says. He says, "This is a battle against an emperor of the sea. There may be times when you can't save lives if you're too stubborn, and there may be times when you can save lives if you just learn to swallow your pride." I really love that line from Sanji. I really love it. And then he has this wonderful transformation, just like his brothers and sister did back in Whole Cake, and is number 3, Germa suit number 3, stealth black, because Law is a total fanboy and knows everything about the Germa suits and says that he hates Germa, but then knows everything about them. I think it's so funny. It's so funny that Law knows literally everything about what Sanji's suit is supposed to do. I love it. Sanji is now in his Germa suit, and he is super quick. He like disappears pretty much, which is what makes him make his mistake later in the arc. And he calls himself Soba Mask, which I think is the funniest thing ever. And he is able to just pretty much wipe the floor with Drake and the little page guy with ease in his Germa suit, which I think is awesome. Then we get to Robin, and Robin ends up getting outed. She's caught by Orochi's personal ninja guard, in a sense. She's caught by them. Luckily, it was one of her clones that got caught, but they know she's somewhere here, so she's trying to get away. Orochi catches her, and they're caught in a conversation when Orochi, so paranoid about the whole 20-year prophecy that Toki had talked about, that he's talking about it again at this party, and everybody thinks that he's just paranoid and they're trying not to laugh at him. And then Toko ends up laughing because she can't stop herself because of the fruit Orochi gave her indirectly, but because of what Orochi did, she couldn't stop herself. And it gets Orochi mad, and he wants to lash out at this tiny child for laughing. One Piece often does a really good job with depicting how innocent children are and how they really should be protected. They've done it, I mean, One Piece has done it since like the beginning, but like highlights the whole incident with Fishman Island, Shirahoshi as a child, that whole situation, Punk Hazard, the child experiments that Caesar was using. We saw it in Dressrosa with how horrible Doflamingo was. We saw it, I mean, even in Whole Cake Island with how Judge used his kids as experiments and not actually treated as human beings. And what happened to his said experiments if they failed his expectations, like Sanji. And we see it here with both Tama and Toko. These kids get caught up in the worst circumstances because of crappy adults who can't control themselves, who think they're better than everything, or are just plain creepy and weird. And I mean, and the kids get caught in the crossfire because they are innocent kids. They don't understand a lot of these things, or they are aware of the situations, but they can't really do anything about it because they're children and they're caught. And they can't do anything about it. Oda does a really good job at using the innocence and pureness of children in One Piece to show the corruption of the adults. Because an adult should never harm a child in any way, shape, or form. And we see that in abundance in this story. And I think it's purposeful. It's used for a reason, not just for the emotional reaction, but as a contrast to show that these kids, especially in Wano, especially some of the ones in Wano, but these kids, and it's not even just in Wano, it's throughout One Piece, but like these kids are more mature in a sense than the adults surrounding them. That these kids who are innocent and carefree and see the world with these bright-eyed expectations are shown nothing but cruelty by adults who should know better, by adults who should be wanting to protect these kids. And there are some in this story, especially in Wano, there are some who do want to protect the kids. Like with Tama, you had like her master and the people in that one village who fed her, they're taking care of her, Kiku and all that. Like, you have people who are trying to take care of her and treat her well. And then you have, with Toko, you have her father, you have the Oiran, Hiyori, you have her, taking care of and watching out for this child. But then you have this majority, in a sense, that see themselves as higher valued, as in a position of more worth than a child's life. And that angers me faster than anything. This was not supposed to be a rant, but here I am. Because adults are supposed to protect children. And especially adults in position of power are supposed to protect and look after and have the best interest at heart for not just their people, but for children. My feelings about Orochi and my anger towards him stem a lot from the way he treats others, the way he treats kids, and the whole situation with the smile spirit. That's just infuriating. But the Oiran defends Toko. She ends up slapping Orochi, which is so satisfying to see. She ends up slapping him, trying to be like, no, stop it. And she ends up saying that she doesn't bow to anybody, that she doesn't, and she says, I refuse, I do not grovel before anyone. When I know I am in the right, I do not need to give an inch. I love that. She says that she's the daughter of a samurai, so she will not back down. They end up getting into a scuffle. Chaos starts erupting in this building, and Robin ends up saving Toko, and they're all getting ready to escape. And Kyoshiro actually does the honorable thing, which Kyoshiro is a character I'm not sure how I feel about. Like, I don't particularly like him, but I don't hate him. Like, he's just kind of in the middle where I'm like, I'm okay with him. And he's got interesting points. He's got an interesting little story going on. But I'm not quite sure how to gauge his character as of right now, but he's okay. Kyoshiro does an honorable thing to give the Oiran an honorable samurai's death. He strikes her down with one slash, as you would a samurai, and he gives her this kind of honorable way out. After he does that, though, he finds the card that she had on her, which was the symbol that the rebellion has been passing around, and he's like, oh, this is interesting. Nami and the others end up coming in to save Nami. Who is it? Nami and Brooke, I believe, are like the main two who come in, and they end up saving Robin and Toko, and they all get out of there. And you get Big Mom, who had woke up on shore, not knowing who she is, found by Tama and Chopper and the others. And because she has a memory loss, she's just totally cool with us now, and they were all eating together, having a good time. Big Mom is sad that they don't have food, so she's like, oh, well, I'm gonna go get all of y'all some food and take it back so we can all eat together, which, Big Mom, that's actually really nice. Thank you very much. So Chopper decides to just go with the flow, and he takes Big Mom to the prison where Luffy is being held in Udon, so that she can kind of help aid in Luffy's escape. And she does. In a different way, but she definitely does. Once they all regroup, you get Robin giving everybody the information she got, and she got a lot of information. Like, she did her job well, and she was still upset because she's like, man, I could have gotten more if I wasn't outed, but whatever, here's what I have. We get Brooke, who said he ended up finding a poneglyph, a separate poneglyph from the road poneglyph that they were supposed to find. They still haven't found that one. There's another poneglyph somewhere in Wano, but he couldn't get a transcription of it because he was in his soul form, but he just kind of knows the location of where it is. So now I'm wondering what other poneglyph is just kind of wandering around here in Wano. And then we get back to Luffy, who is not able to stand by when Hyo is getting beat again, because Luffy gave him all these food coupons to go get more dumplings so the man could actually eat, because, I mean, Luffy wants people to eat. He wants people to be happy. And the fact that Luffy was willing to share his food, I'm sorry. Luffy was willing to part with these coupons that were giving him food. And he says, you know what? Here you go. You're gonna need these more. You go get a full meal. And decides to work for even more for himself. I'm telling y'all, something's different about Luffy this arc. Like, he's willingly sharing his food with people. Jokes aside, Hyo ends up being hurt because they're like, oh, well, you didn't earn these tickets yourself. You can't eat. And he's getting beat up for it. Hyo, on the other hand, is still trying to eat all the food because he's so grateful to Luffy. He doesn't want Luffy's efforts to go to waste because he has this kind of kinship with Luffy. He really is connected and bonded to Luffy through all these incidents. And Luffy, one of his little feral smiles, and this jump, the panel where he jumps towards them is so funny. Like the man looks like a mad lad when he's jumping to them. And at the same time, Raizo is just like, oh, I've got the key. Just hang tight, Luffy. Don't cause any disarray. Don't cause any, you know, any big commotion. We'll get you out soon. We just need to escape quietly. And then here's Luffy. And Luffy directly attacks a prison guard just as Queen arrives. And Luffy is taking all of this in stride too. Like, he's taking all of this, like all the people that he's having to fight against. He's like, this is just training. This is training to get me stronger for Kaido. Queen arrives and he does a little dance. I did look up Queen's dance for the anime. It is hilarious. I have had the whole Zuma, 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 Zuma stuck in my head and I can't get it out. So yes, I have Queen's song stuck in my head now because I looked it up because I wanted to know, because it's just one page in the manga and I wanted to see how they did that, because I'm like, how, like, is he just like dancing around as like a full performance, because it looks like everybody was like paying attention to him. Yeah, no, it's a full-blown performance. I think it's hilarious. I love it. And I do love as soon as Queen gets done with his performance and he's like, all right, tell me the top things you're worried about. And every time they say something, you know, they're like, oh, well, Kid escaped. His face is shocked. And then he's like, oh yeah, someone stole the key to the prison cuffs, and he's shocked again. And he's like, oh yeah, and Luffy's escaping as we speak. And Queen's like, stop him. Those few things about Queen's introduction when he was dancing, and then that moment, that kind of made me like Queen, I'm not gonna lie. He's kind of fun. He's a fun guy. But Luffy and Hyo end up being forced into like this sumo competition, and they get chains around their neck that don't come off, much like the Celestial Dragons one. That one, that was not a good point. But yes, if they step out of the sumo ring, blades will come out of the chains in their neck and basically decapitate them. So they're forced to fight, and as they're fighting, Luffy, again, he's just like, well, this is just training, I'm gonna get stronger, and he starts thinking about all the training that Rayleigh put him through, and he ends up trying to use some of this hockey in the way that Rayleigh did, and Hyo ends up noticing it, decides to help Luffy out, because Hyo is like this legendary like boss man from the past and is still super strong and has hockey himself, except in Wano it's called Ryo instead of hockey. And so Luffy's learning like these advanced forms of hockey and all of this, and they're just training and fighting together this entire time. So Luffy's getting his own training arc while he's in prison. And that's when we get the whole bath incident. Drake discovered all of them. They had to escape. Sanji ended up helping them escape. So Sanji's whole thing is made up for in 3 ways. 1, Nami just destroyed his face for the time being. 2, the jealousy he feels over Hiyori and Zoro, because Zoro got a girl and he doesn't. So he got his comeuppance on that part. And the final one is just he made up for his mistake by himself by saving Toko during the public execution. We get Zoro fighting against the bandit who had stolen Shisui from him, which is supposed to be this legendary sword from Wano that had gone missing, and the bandit took it to kind of restore it to its natural place. Zoro did not like that his sword got stolen, so they were fighting, and then ends up fighting against Killer, who we find out is Killer later. He fights against Killer, who was chasing Hiyori and Toko from the capital. So he ends up fighting against them, takes a very serious injury into his shoulder, but ends up fighting them. Hiyori ends up taking him and treating him, and Hiyori is just absolutely smitten. And yes, it is Hiyori, Momo's little sister, who is now in her 20s, because it's been, 20 years. So she's like 26 or something now, and is completely smitten with Zoro. So smitten. It's so funny. I love their dynamic. Toko knew about Hiyori's true identity. They had always stayed kind of close. So Zoro saved both of them and was kind of teaming up with them, letting them know what was going on. That is when we learned that Law's crew, Beppo and those two men, were taken by Hawkins, taken captive and thrown in prison. Law, even though he knows it's probably a trap, goes after them after having a very heated fight with the little Shinobu lady, because she doesn't want him to go, and Law is not about to abandon his crew. She makes implications that they might have outed them. He does not stand for that, and he leaves to go get his crew back. And then we get Yasu having this conversation with all of the samurai, showing them, the symbol that they had gotten, and was talking to them about it. None of them remembered him at the time because he looked a lot different. And also during Hiyori and Zoro's time together, she explains why she didn't get taken, which I still think is a little crappy. Why she didn't get put into the future too. I think that's really crappy what they did. But she also mentions Kawamatsu, this person who took care of her for all of these years up until she was 13, and then she went off to kind of sustain her own life so that he wouldn't have to miss any more meals. And we get more about Yasu, how treasured he is by everybody around him, because he genuinely cares about others. He genuinely cares about how they're doing, their quality of life, and he's checking up on everybody, and they call him a saint, that he's their saint. And everybody just reveres him and adores him. Back in prison, we get Hyo figuring out about Raizo and everything, that the rebellion is happening, that not everybody's dead, that they're here and they're back. And he convinces their little group to recruit everybody in the jail, because most of them are there because of a rebellion against Orochi. They're the perfect candidates to recruit to their raid. And the man is a genius because it works so well. We get a lot of stuff's going on in the background. You have more fighting with Luffy, you have Orochi finding out stuff, you have our group doing things in the background. There's so many moving pieces. The only person still missing from our main group is Cat Viper. He is still not back from trying to recruit Marco. He's still nowhere to be found, but I have a feeling he'll still come, but he's not here. So Dogstorm and Kinemon, they're all trying to get everything together to prepare for the raid. Brook ends up finding Zoro with Hiyori, and they kind of catch everybody up to speed. And that is when it is known that Yasu was captured, and he was this famous and valued lord from 20 years ago that was rumored to have been dead, but he was alive this entire time. And he also just happens to be Toko's dad. And he's supposed to be publicly executed. And the entire time he's up there, he's smiling and laughing because of the smile fruit, that he doesn't have a choice. And I love his speech. I mean, it's super long. I can't read all of it here. It's so long. But oh my gosh, his speech tugged at my heartstrings so much. I was getting so emotional just seeing what he was saying, and it made me hurt. And then you have everybody going to the square to, you know, watch this. And you have Zoro and the villagers that, you know, all revere him. They're all coming. You have Sanji's group all coming. You have it being broadcast everywhere in Wano, so Luffy's able to watch this from prison. And I kept thinking, because they don't do deaths in One Piece very often, I kept thinking that they were somehow going to get Yasu down, that they were going to stop it before it happened, that someone was going to interfere to save him. But that did not happen. We get his background with Odin, how he always looked after Odin and gave him kind of this tough love. We see him after all of this, and he's smiling down at everybody, knowing that he has done what he could to save the rebellion. He changed the code. He took all the blame on himself, saying it was just, you know, an old fool's dream. Like, I just made it up. There's nothing going on. I just did it because I didn't want to die without, you know, doing anything. I didn't want to die quietly. So I did it. Nobody else is involved. People who got arrested for their little tattoos were just arrested because of a trend that they had. And he took all of it upon himself while already having in place a new symbol for them to follow so that the rebellion could stay alive, and all the people, the true samurai, the ones who were truly dedicated to the cause, would recognize that and see it, and those who weren't would be fooled. He calls Orochi out. He says, all you have done in our bountiful forests and fields and rivers and villages is pollute and corrupt them with your sludge and greed. You are nothing but vermin. And then he says, when Orochi says any last words after he's talked this whole thing through, he says, shall I recite the words that have a stranglehold on your heart? A man of such small caliber shall never in his life truly devour Odin. And as he's about to die, he's crying, but he has a huge smile on his face, and he says, cover the children's eyes. Because he's one of the ones who actually does care about the state of Wano, about the youth, about everybody who is there. He cares so deeply about his country, about the people, his friends, his family. And as Toko is running towards him, Yasu gets shot several times. And his last thoughts are, forgive me, Toko. Forgive your father for leaving you behind. That got me. That got me. And then what was even worse is after he falls to the ground and then everybody's laughing because you have all these people who have eaten the smile fruit who can do nothing but laugh because of what they've ingested, and they're trying to cry. They're so sad, but they can't cope with their grief because of this artificial fruit inside of them, that all they can do is laugh. And it makes everybody angry, or at least our group. It makes everybody in our group angry because they're like, why are they laughing? Why are they laughing at him? I thought they loved him. I thought they idolized him. Why are they laughing at his death? And then Hiyori and the others start to explain what is actually going on, what is happening, and why they're laughing. And after the explanation, everybody's so angry. Which, yeah, I would be furious too. And even Luffy, watching from prison, he's like, nobody deserves to be laughed at after they die. And the fact that it's named the smile fruit as a mockery for the effects it has on people, just, I'm so upset. Like, that's just cruel. That's so freaking cruel. And with Orochi, feeding all these leftover fruits to this village and making them all be like these people who can't laugh. And they say, so every last person is bright and cheerful. It might look happy at a glance, but it's a tragic place where children can't even mourn their parents' death. I beg you, don't blame them for laughing. And you can see it on Zoro's face. He is infuriated. Absolutely just purely enraged. And Toko went through the gate to get to her dad. The coward himself, Orochi, sees Toko over her father's body, crying and laughing at the same time, and decides to try to shoot her. But thank goodness, Sanji and Zoro step in and save her. Which, thank y'all. I wish y'all would have moved a little bit sooner, but it's fine. They save Toko. Zoro ends up giving Toko to Sanji, and he goes straight for Orochi, which, yes sir, please do. Kyosho ends up going against Zoro to protect Orochi because he's the Shogun's dog. He has to. We get Sanji ending up giving Toko to Usopp so that he can fight against Drake, and they're all going off. So there's this huge uprising in the city center. And as they're all fighting, we have Law, who ends up going against Hawkins and surrendering himself in place of his crew because Hawkins used his little devil fruit ability to attach his crew's life to his, so Law would have to kill all of the members of his crew before he could even get to Hawkins. So Law ends up trading places with them. Law says not to tell the Straw Hats anything about what he's doing or why he's not there, and he ends up getting tortured a little bit for information, but obviously he doesn't give anything. And in the end, he's the one hurting Hawkins, asking about what happened to the alliance with Kid and Drake and Apu and all of that. Like, what happened to their alliance, and Apu betrayed all of them because he was in league with Kaido the whole time, so they were offered a choice either to join or basically kind of die. So they joined. Kid was the only one who didn't, and that's why he was captured. That's why Killer was in the state he was in and given the smile fruit. So that's why it all dispersed, and they're kind of on their own. Law ends up walking out. I guess Hawkins either lets him go for some reason, but Law ends up walking, and he's on the move at the end of this arc towards the boats and everything to get to Onegaishima. So there's a lot going on in the background regarding Law. We get more on Kid and Killer. Kid was recaptured alongside Killer because he was shocked at, Killer's laugh and the whole idea that his face was showing. And he was enraged because he didn't know what happened to his partner, to his friend. After the whole situation with Luffy and the rebellion and everything, I'm about to get to that. After that whole situation, Kid kind of ends up just walking out on his own with Killer. They're going to do their own thing. So they're still kind of independent agents, in a sense, in this arc, in Wano. We don't exactly know what their role is going to be. But Queen does kind of pull a really bad move and tries to torture Kid and Killer by drowning them upside down and making Luffy decide, he's like, oh, well, the only way they get their heads out of water is if you step out of the ring and you lose and you die. But that's when Big Mom shows up. She has a hankering for food. Queen tries to stop her and gets thoroughly tossed around by Big Mom like it's nothing. Big Mom finds the food that she's looking for, only to open it up and see that it's all empty, and she gets so depressed over it. She's so disheartened that her food was not there. And the expression she makes when she realizes that there's no food there. And then Luffy had to open his mouth. He didn't even realize he said it out loud. But he was like, man, that food really tasted good. Made himself a target for Big Mom. Big Mom started rampaging after him. He ends up getting thrown out of the ring, but he uses last minute the hockey that Rayleigh did when he removed Kaney's chain collar from her back in Sabaody. He does it to save himself and Hyo at the very last minute. Hyo tries to make him do it again by standing in front of Big Mom, and he says, protect me. So Luffy tries, and he's going up against Big Mom. Kinda, sorta, didn't work. They ended up flying into a wall, and Big Mom is pursuing them. But as they're fighting, I guess they make an entire circle around the whole prison camp and everything, and Queen comes to stop Big Mom, ends up bonking her in the head, and she gets her memory back and she realizes it's Queen, starts calling him out. And the moment she does and he realizes that he's her target, his face, and he's just like, I'm a goner. Nope, 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 nope. Like, it's so funny. But then she passes out, so they like put all these chains on her, all these sea prism cuffs. They like lock her down and they're like, no, we're shipping her off ASAP. We're taking her to Kaido, like Onigashima. We're going over there. And so Queen and majority of everybody just takes off and leaves the prison. And Luffy begins to have a field day. And he's like, oh, that's great. This place is mine now. Oh, what he says. What does he say? He says, so I get to fight all I want. And when they're like, oh, he's still free, he says, I've always been free. And now this place is mine. The prisoners end up trying to attack him because at the moment their spirits are still broken. And they don't want to, you know, hurt for fighting back against the jailers and their guards and everything, so they're trying to fight against Luffy. Luffy's not happy with it. And then we get Kawamatsu coming in, the Kappa. He comes in to start helping and kind of gives everybody this refresher of like who he is and kind of gives everybody a little bit of hope in the rebellion that is going on. And everybody kind of shows themselves in like their mask, or everybody to show like, no, we're not ghosts. We're real. We're here. We're ready to fight. Come join our cause, pretty much. Luffy and Chopper end up fighting together when this one guard starts to play dirty by firing rounds of a virus into somebody. A virus called Mummy automatically makes Chopper angry because he's like, how dare you weaponize a virus? And then Luffy's just like, how dare you do this to these prisoners who have barely had anything to eat? So they're fighting. And all of these people are starting to get really sick. They're infected with this disease. And Luffy is just angry. His anger surfaces again here when all of these prisoners are shouting at him, saying like, if you wouldn't have showed up, this wouldn't have happened, you know. Even if you are these great people, that was 20 years ago, like, why would you drag us into it? They're like, well, you still can't beat Kaido. Like, even though you're here, that doesn't mean you can beat Kaido. Like, we're still up against Kaido. And Luffy? Oh my gosh. I love this moment more than I should. Luffy goes up to this group of infected people, stretches his arms out, and, like, bear hugs all of them. To their complete shock, because he's willingly infecting himself with the same virus, with the same disease. And oh my gosh, this speech from Luffy. They're all like, oh, well, what are you doing? And he says, you call this devastation. You call this overwhelming power. This stuff has no effect on me. And you can clearly tell that it does have an effect on him. He is being affected by this virus. But he doesn't stop. He says, the samurai I know are all strong and hardy, but you guys are broken all the way on the inside. What do you mean normal life? Obeying every order they give you, living off of dumplings, is that normal? Open your eyes, you're nothing but slaves. And as he's saying, as he's throwing them to the ground to stop them from fighting, to stop them from continuing their pursuit, to kind of like open their eyes in a sense by giving them a physical reminder to open their eyes. And he keeps going. He's saying, so what if I came from another place? Why can't an outsider help protect your country? Just, the speech is just, He says, I made a promise with a friend named Tama who fed me back in curry. I promised to make this a place where you can eat your fill again. And that promise is coming up again. And he keeps going. He keeps pressing him, talking about how he's heard about Kaido. He's heard about Oda, and he's heard about what a great man he was 20 years ago. And he says, but the day Kaido killed him 20 years ago was the day this country stopped working right. We came here to fight Kaido and win. With that, Luffy starts going on a rampage, and he ends up going to the elephant guy and touching the trunk. Oh my gosh, that moment when he just appears in front of him and just like grabs his trunk, and then he looks at him, and the way he looks at him, I'm like, oh my gosh, Luffy, stop. But he looks and he's like, I just saw a really bad future just now. Luffy, chill, relax. And he goes, and then he like he defeats that guy, walks off, and then points, and he says, "You get the rest." And just like that, with that speech and his actions alone, he rallied everybody to him. They all started fighting back no matter the consequence, because his speech, his words got to them, and then he backed up those words with his actions, and they were like, no, this is a man we can follow. Sorry, what? Oh my gosh. I love that speech. I love that speech from Luffy. And after that, they defeated everybody in the prison, and they got a lot of new allies. Chopper is able to heal not just Luffy, who was very affected by the disease. He's able to help everybody else after he finds the antidote. And then Momo comes out as like their final proof of everything. And everybody's like hope is restored at that moment, fully. And they're all like 100% on board after they see Momo. We have Ashura Doji taking Kinemon to see the graves of everybody who had tried to fight back and rebel against Kaido before the 20 years, and we see all of their graves, and Ashura is like, why did it have to be 20 years? You know, why did we have to wait 20 years? And I think because of the whole prophecy thing with Toki, she foresaw Luffy being here and knew Luffy would be the one to lead them to victories. But I'm assuming as of right now. But then we get Kaido versus Big Mom, because Big Mom woke up, they unchained her, and her and Kaido started fighting. And it was a very scary fight. Like, it was similar to when Shanks and Whitebeard fought each other. The Sky did like almost the exact same thing as it did back then. They fought each other, but then even though they fought each other, like few chapters later, they're buddy forming an alliance, saying, hey, we're gonna work together, and then after this is all settled, then we'll continue our death match. What? Okay. I guess that's how their friendship works. It's fine. So they're in an alliance together. We get the story of the Onimaru Fox from Kawamatsu and how he was trying to use that story as a relation to how they were going to get all these weapons, that they needed to find all these weapons, you know, that the fox had been guarding all those years ago. And I'm pretty sure the fox is that bandit who was fighting Zoro earlier. That's the impression I got from it. Kawamatsu ends up finding all of the weapons. So now the rebellion has the weapons that they need, they have the ships that they need, and they're starting to get the allies that they need. They have over 4,000. I think they're up to like 4,200 by the end of the act. So they're doing good. They're kind of getting everything in place. Everything's kind of falling in order. It's a very quick countdown from here. The days pass by very quickly. We see people, you know, training in the background. We have Zoro introduced to Enma, this sword, and this sword that Odin left for Hiyori, and Hiyori gives it to Zoro in exchange for leaving Shusui in Wano where it belongs. Zoro takes control of Enma, and I love that when he like slashes it, and it slashes like the side of the mountain or the side of the cliff, and it like shrivels up his arm, but then he's like, hey, give it back, and then it gives it back. Like, he's got good control over Enma, and he's been practicing with it for days to kind of stay in control and tame the sword. So he's doing well with that. You see Luffy continuing to train. Everybody is either at this point training, they're gathering supplies or intel, or they're prepping for what they're going to be doing once they actually get to Onigashima. You have the numbers coming back, these like beasts coming back with Apu, who is now back on Wano. We did get this little tidbit of information with Zoro that might be connected to Kuina's father, I think, or someone else that he knew in the past, because he had mentioned, you know, something that he had said to Momo was something that his trainer back in his youth would always say, but he's never said it himself. And then when he's talking about Enma, the Blade Enma, they're saying the blade Wado Ichimonji and Enma were crafted by the same man, the blacksmith Shimotsuki Kozaburo. I think I probably butchered his name, I'm so sorry. They said he left the laws and left this land over 50 years ago. So those two swords are connected. I don't know if that has anything to do with Zoro's old master, Kuina's father, or if that's somebody else that Zoro happened to know back on that island where he was training in the dojo. But I did pick that up. I thought that was a really interesting little like tidbit I'm keeping my eye on. But the time is up for them to prepare, and we have the samurai all moving out towards the port that they're supposed to meet at. Everybody doing their final like checks, final closing calls and everything. And Act 2 ends with the fire festival starting. And it says, and a battle that will affect the fate of the very world is about to begin. This arc is just crazy so far. It's absolutely a doozy. There's so much happening. There's so much information. But now I think since a lot of the intel gathering is over and we're actually approaching the fight, I know there's still going to be a lot of information we're going to be gaining other than just like the action and the battle sequences, probably some backstories or some really good character moments coming up in the story, but maybe not as information heavy as it was in the first two acts, and I'm okay with that because that was a lot. That was a lot of information to be given in a span of like 30 chapters. But yes, that is my review of Act 2. I have a feeling some stuff's about to happen, and I'm not fully prepared for it. I want Orochi to vanquish. I want Kaido to lose. I want Big Mom just to get out of here. She can just please leave, or she can lose too. That's fine. I want to see Luffy fulfill his promise because it has come up again in this act, and it's been used again to inspire people to side with him on a grander scale. And I'm ready to see what Oda's got in store for Act 3 of Wano, because I know Wano is more than Act 3. There's a lot more following that, but oh my goodness. It's about to get crazy. It's about to get absolutely insane. I love Yasu. He is amazing. I love Toko. Thank you all so much for watching this video. If you're watching it on the day this is releasing, happy Thanksgiving to everybody. I hope everybody that celebrates Thanksgiving has a fantastic day. You eat as much as you want. I know I certainly will. I will be as Luffy would be on Thanksgiving. He would love this holiday, by the way. I am going to be stuffing my face, much like Luffy would. I hope all of y'all enjoy y'all's Thanksgiving, and thank you all for watching this video. I am most definitely super grateful for all of you. I would not be doing this if it weren't for y'all. So thank you all so much for watching this review. Act 3, or at least some part of Act 3. I have no idea how long Act 3 is. Some part of Act 3 will be starting next week, so be on the lookout for that. I don't know how far I'm gonna get, but we're starting we're starting Act 3 next week, so be on the lookout for that. And other than that, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time, scholars. Bye.